Expelled students of Reddit. What was the reason for your expulsion? Was absent for too many days. Had doctor's notes and chronic health problems. Was told to never come back. Student. Absent for too many days. School. Expels students so they miss more days because they miss days. The logic reminds me of debtors' prisons. You owe us money. Now go sit in jail where you can't work until you've managed to pay us back. Albeit, for most applications of this policy that I've seen, it's more a factor of the student missed too many days to be considered having received the education for the grade they are in. So they must repeat that grade. The student will be expelled so they're not wasting everyone's time by participating in a class they can't graduate anyway. If you think about it in a bureaucratic fashion, the reasoning makes some sense, but it's disappointing that for so many areas, there aren't really any accommodations made in such situations for students who are forced to miss school for reasons far beyond their control. That happened to my girlfriend in high school. It's just so stupid. She had a viable plan to graduate on time and everything, but her guidance counselor and assistant principal, who, a fake, were supposed to be helping her, just forced her out. Maybe they wanted to improve their school-wide testing average to qualify for some government money, and expelling was a way to remove someone who was likely to test poorly. I went to a private Christian university, and I have a friend who got expelled for supposedly exorcising a demon out of someone in the middle of a wide open courtyard. You can tell it worked because she finally yelled, for all to hear, "Jesus, I'm coming." I mean, isn't that better than letting them remain possessed? 'Cause, y'all know they believe in that stuff. Some Christian colleges have rules against openly practicing gifts of the Spirit due to how they have been abused in the past. Do not stop him, Jesus said, for no one who does a miracle in my name can in the next moment say anything bad about me, for whoever is not against us is for us. Mark 9:39-40. Told my classmates the dog treats I brought were jerky. Everyone, including a couple from our sister class and the teachers, ate them. That's hilarious. My sister ate begging strips once thinking they were actual bacon strips as a kid. Can I answer by proxy with a story? My high school was one of those high schools where we have a cop who just kind of chills at the one busy hallway intersection, presumably to deal with drugs or fights or some shit. One day a kid was acting out. I wish I knew the full details, but all I knew was he started some kind of altercation or fight and the cop stopped him. The kid was said something like, "You better get your hands off me," and of course the cop did not get his hands off him. The kid headbutted the cop and disoriented him, then just beat the piss out of him and hospitalized him. That kid obviously got expelled. We got a new cop for our school, and I'm pretty sure that kid is still in jail because I think he was 18, so he didn't even get to get tried like a minor. This was an extraordinary story. My school was not usually this bad. We had a lot of podheads and a fight every now and then, but that was about it. Wasn't my expulsion? Dude, in my Catholic high school was trouble. Long line of disciplinary infractions. Final straw was that a friend of his got a new car, so he decided to jerk off on it. The senior parking lot was a busy social scene before and after school. People would arrive around 30 minutes early and hang around their cars. Couples would have a pre-class maquillage. Folks would chat, etc. So this guy, in front of all of us, pulled his pants down to his knees and began beating his baloney. It was funny for the first 3 seconds or so. Then it became clear that this guy was going to finish the job. Came all over the headlight. Some girls made disgusted sounds. Some guys laughed. Most people were just sort of in shock at having witnessed that. Dude was gone by the end of the day. Announcement that afternoon tells students that he was no longer permitted on school premises, to include the parking lot, and no one was to permit him entry to our buildings. He's a podiatrist now. Till podiatrist means foot doctor, roughly. I'm surprised I didn't know this cause I broke my foot a few years ago. Edit. My third highest rated post is about feet, and not even in a fun way. Podiatry is one of those professions that confuses me in the US. You can be a podiatrist, DPM, and complete a surgical residency. Once licensed as a podiatric surgeon, you can do full-on foot surgery. You can amputate up to a certain point on the calf as well. Meanwhile, there are orthopedists, MDs, who also work on the foot. The foot isn't the sole domain of DPMs. Meanwhile, if you want to be a maxillofacial surgeon, you need to be both an MD and a DDS-DMD because the teeth are solely dentist territory. No MDs allowed unless they also have a dental license. And don't get me started on the uselessness of optometry. What a country. I know you said not to get you started on it, but why is optometry useless? That's the people who prescribe glasses and stuff, right? We have ophthalmologists. They are MDs and can do everything an optometrist can do plus surgery. I think one state allows optometrists to perform some eye surgeries. We also have opticians who dispense eyeglasses. After your eye exam, it's a licensed optician who fits you 4 glasses, marks the lenses for bifocals, etc. In many countries, optometry isn't a thing. You're either an ophthalmologist or an optician. In such places, you go to an MD if you have need of an actual physician. That is treatment of a condition. If you just need glasses, you go to an optician since you don't need 4 years of optometry school plus 4 years of undergrad to operate the big machine with the different lenses. I'm copying my reply to someone else. They are the ones who prescribe glasses and the better part of the world gets along just fine without them. We have ophthalmologists. They are MDs and can do everything an optometrist can do plus surgery. I think one state allows optometrists to perform some eye surgeries. We also have opticians who dispense eyeglasses. After your eye exam, it's a licensed optician who fits you 4 glasses, marks the lenses for bifocals, etc. In many countries, optometry isn't a thing. You're either an ophthalmologist or an optician. In such places, you go to an MD if you have need of an actual physician. That is treatment of a condition. If you just need glasses, you go to an optician since you don't need 4 years of optometry school plus 4 years of undergrad to operate the big machine with the different lenses. Sexual deviant turned podiatrist. I'll bet my left foot he has a foot fetish. Alright. I originally thought he was going to get thrown out for BS because Catholic school is weird like that. Nope, that response was entirely reasonable. Wasn't an isolated incident with him, either. Dude was constant trouble. He had at least 3 suspensions, including one for telling a nun to go fuck herself, loudly, in the hallway between classes. Dude was cruising for expulsion anyway. He just went out with a bang, or a squirt, as it were. I had to go before the school board to see if I was gonna get expelled, but they decided not to. I sold a bunch of caffeine pills to my friends for $4.25 a piece and they were all worried about drugs. They even sent them off to be tested. I do the exact same thing. I'm a debate kid currently in HS and I sell caffeine pills at tournaments. It's a really good place to sell caffeine because tournaments usually have whack scheduling. Us debaters usually have to be at school at around 5-7 in the morning after being in round until about midnight at most turns. And X200B. Since the debate community has a huge adderall problem, it's understandable why kids selling caffeine pills at tournaments would be concerning to schools. So I make sure nobody says anything. Nobody that's an administrator has found out yet, and it's an easy way to make a quick buck. I went to a Christian school with a strange learning system from K-5. They use the Accelerated Christian Education program to teach students. There were no teachers, just supervisors and monitors. The supervisors and monitors went through a 1-week course to get their jobs. Students basically taught themselves through workbooks. If you didn't understand something, the supervisor or monitor would just refer you back to the section that taught you how to do it. This system didn't work for me because being left to myself made it impossible to pay attention. When you didn't do your work, you were given demerits. After a certain amount of demerits, you were given a 1-hour detention after school. The school also still used corporal punishments, so paddlings were a thing, of which I'd gotten 2 or 3. After a good amount of a school year of having detention after school literally 5 days a week, not being allowed to have lunch with my classmates, and not being allowed to go to gym class, they saw it as a privilege. I was called into the office one day and was read the letter they'd be sending my parents that I was no longer a student at their school. They didn't call my parents to speak to them or ask them to come in. I had to tell my mother in the car after she picked me up that I'd been expelled. So by school, you mean private scam that the Christians were running? Was gonna say, sounds like a money-making scam. No actual teachers, just monitors that probably were paid less than a teacher, no support whatsoever, yet I smell a money-making scam. While reading some of these reasons, I'm realizing that a lot of people at my Catholic high school should have been expelled. We had a dance once and the lights had to be turned on and the dance stopped because 2 kids were having sex on the dance floor. The girl was a teacher's daughter. Also, a friend of mine puked on my principal's desk because she was so drunk, and another girl shit in the girl's bathroom sink. Oh, and another guy punched his GF and a random dude because they were dancing together. All of these people only got suspended for a few days. It also all occurred during dances, and somehow the school still continues to have dances. 2 kids were having sex on the dance floor, or just expelled from any school. WTF. Yeah, we had 2 people have sex on the dance floor at my senior prom. There was also some dudes who got caught smoking a blunt in the bathroom. Those were the highlights of prom that year. I don't think anyone was expelled over any of that. Meanwhile, I was smoking a cigar in a hot tub. Some people regret not going to prom, but I feel like I made the right decision here. As a private Catholic high school alumnus, one can never discount the fact that you are paying to be there into the expulsion equation. They will go to great lengths to avoid losing non-replaceable revenue. My cousin went to school one day with a water bottle of vodka, didn't even make it to lunch before blacking out in class and making a huge mess. I think he got 2-3 days suspension. When you pay them, they tend to care less. I went to a private Catholic high school as well, and the number of kids that snuck off during lunch or free period to fuck in the chapel was huge. Yeah, it's a lot easier to get expelled from Catholic private school than public, right? I went to public school in Nick and NJ from K-12. There were fights all the time and constant swearing. Yet I envy or met anyone who got expelled. My friend who goes to private school told me people got expelled for saying the N-word. Depends. A lot of schools are hurting for students, so they'll avoid expelling people as much as possible. Happened to my best friend. In marching band in high school, we all sat at the same cafeteria table. At the end of it, someone punched someone in the shoulder and said, "Pass it on." and down the side of the table you'd get punched in the shoulder. You turn to the person next to you, punch them and say pass it on. My friend across the table was just playing the game and punched the kid next to him. We are in high school, mind you. This kid starts crying, and I mean crying really hard. Lunch is over and he runs to the assistant principal and tells him. The principal gets involved and the punched kid's parents come in at the end of the day demanding my friend be expelled. The assistant principal interviews some of us from the table and I said we were all playing and nobody punched anybody hard. He didn't buy it. Friend got expelled for 120 days. Had to reapply back to the school at the next school year, and when he did was put on academic suspension, which meant any screw ups and he was permanently expelled from the school district. As for punched kid, I read a news article a couple years later where his father beat up his mother on Christmas Eve over his mistress. Well, that crying kid certainly sounds very stable with a super wholesome home life. The principal gets involved in the punched kid's parents. Read that as the principal got involved and punched the kid's parents, and I was like, Jesus, what a turn of events here lol. And X200B. Lightsaber battle. My friends and I arranged a giant lightsaber battle on the last day of my sophomore year of high school. It was a huge hit with the students, but the faculty wasn't thrilled. Being a private school, they felt it hurt their image and singled me out as the ringleader. On my first day back after the summer, I was put on academic probation and expelled about a week later for profanity. Went to public school for my junior and senior year. Totally worth it. Edit. Spelling formatting. What can I say? I went to public school. You must be very proud. For real though, this is the coolest response. Is there any video of it? Actually there might be. I'll have to dig up my old YouTube account when I get off work. You didn't say any swear words, so why did they expel you for profanity? They probably did cuss at some point, so the school used it as an excuse to expel him. I had a girl in my Catholic high school get expelled for getting pregnant, but her boyfriend, who admitted it was his, was allowed to stay. What a great way to teach kids responsibility, and give that unborn child a real head start at life. Catholic Church in not having a child's best interests at heart, shocker. Went to a private school and saw this all the time. The one I really hated though was the girl who was raped and became pregnant because of it. They didn't care. I pointed out that this wasn't a very Christian thing to do. Was quoted a few scriptures about whores in the Bible. Gasp. Someone attacked you and had sex with you without your consent while you couldn't do anything about it. Big on whore. Oof. My Catholic school has a similar policy according to a teacher of mine. A pregnant student will eventually be asked to leave due to the fact that she's pregnant. I've never heard of that policy being used though. Classic Catholic school. Punish the woman but not the man. Way to teach good Christian values. Pulled a knife on a girl who'd been bullying me and beating me up for nearly 2 years. After all attempts at intervention failed, I was in physical jeopardy every single day at school, and teachers literally watched me get my head slammed into lockers and did nothing. My clothes were stolen during pay and I had to go to class in my dirty gym uniform. I was shoved downstairs. The vice principal gave my parents lip service. The parents of the girl who was my worst bully said I was making it up. Cops? This was the 80s. The cops didn't care about school bullies. So I threatened this in front of a large number of students that I would stab her in the throat if she ever touched me again. I got expelled. Then my mother threatened to sue the entire school district and the vice principal personally. My mother was not a woman to be fucked with, and she managed to get them to reverse the expulsion and only put me in school suspension for 10 days. The school still wouldn't move my locker or change my classes, but that girl didn't fuck with me again. No one did for the rest of the school year because they thought I was crazy, so at least that worked. Not me, but my brother got expelled for using a vocabulary word correctly in a sentence. For context, it was not that long after Columbine, and people were overreacting to every little thing. My brother was not a bad kid, but was a bullied kid with a smart mouth. He had a history of making threats. Read. He once told another kid he was going to eat his grandchildren. Long story short, it was English class, and the teacher called on him and asked him to use the word retribution in a sentence. He said something to the effect of, "I will have retribution on those who have wronged me." School took it as a threat, and with his past record, he was expelled. Honestly, there's no real way to use that word and not make it sound creepy or threatening. Pretty much, they basically set him up to fail by picking that word. My mother even went and yelled at the school board over it, but they wouldn't budge. I've actually heard a lot of similar stories from around the same time. People kind of went nuts. Understandable, but it was the kids who paid for it. Could always make it negative, like, pacifists do not seek retribution against those who have wronged them. Ostereth's friend replied. He stared into the chaos that was the blackboard with no emotion, then clenched his fist tightly, breaking his pencil into, and continued, "I am not one of them. And you have wronged me." The teacher looked in awe as the pen got slowly and painfully inserted in his eyeball. I have a story similar to that one. I was, in 4th grade, asked why someone would change their name. I, in my infinite 10-year-old wisdom, said that you would if you killed someone. That didn't go over very well with my teacher, or the principal. I mean, it's a good answer though. You can't exactly keep using the same name if you're on the run from the law. My friend and I stole a girl's reading book, singeing the edges of the cover so it would look like lost pirate booty, and hid it in the art room. Then we used 3 rolls of masking tape to create a 3D spiral maze of stickiness that crisscrossed the room, and gave the girl a singed-edged pirate map to locate her book. She rolled her eyes at us, clambered through the tape maze, and retrieved her book, calling us dorks and laughing. And X200B. However, a teacher discovered the taped-up art room before we had a chance to take it down. My friend and I were called to the principal. I figured we were going to get in some trouble to wasting tape, or possibly suspended for using a lighter inside school. And X200B. Nope. And X200B. The principal explained that we had engaged in burning books, which was an artsy behavior. When we tried to explain how our edge singing was merely decorative, she argued that any non-Nazi interpretation was obviously a lie, because she had seen with her own eyes very clearly that we had used masking tape to create a giant swastika in the art room. A swastika? No. It's just a big vortex of tape. It's a maze. And X200B. This wasn't a final straw type situation. Neither my friend nor I had ever done anything before that could be somehow construed as Nazi positive. We had no interest in Nazis, weren't currently studying Nazis, and had no sympathy for Nazi thought. And X200B. We had, however, neglected to know much about the book we'd taken from the girl. She was in a different English class than we were, and was reading a book we didn't know. It turned out to be Night by Elie Wiesel, a first-person account of living through the Nazi Holocaust. And X200B. So from our point of view we were screwing around, wasting tape and being silly pirates. But from the principal's point of view we had desecrated a book about the Holocaust, and created a giant masking tape swastika in the art room. Oh, and the girl we had stolen the book from? She was Jewish, so was the principal, and X200B. We were subjected to a long uncomfortable monologue about the horrors the principal's family had suffered trying to escape the Holocaust. At the end of it we made the appropriate noises of shock and contrition, and once again tried to explain how it really was a big misunderstanding, and that our actions were certainly dumb and irresponsible but not anti-Semitic, and X200B. But the next thing that happened was we were walked to our lockers and told to empty them. Our parents were called to pick us up. We were no longer welcome on the school property. The Board of Education would assist us in trying to find new placement at different schools so we could complete the 8th grade elsewhere. And X200B. So that's why I was expelled. The one and only time in my life I was ever accused of being an accidental Nazi. And X200B. Edit. I've also never been a Nazi on purpose, either. So don't get any funny ideas. Edit. Spelling. And X200B. That's actually crazy. That principal was terrible. I'm Jewish and went to a Jewish school for 12 years pre-K to grade 9. Hated it because of my class, but everyone knew that 12-13-year-olds can be dumb little shits who know nothing about the Holocaust. I don't think schools even go into that much detail about WW2 until high school even. If I were her it would have been much more appropriate of a punishment to reunite and do a detailed report on it. I to reunite in grade 8. Very good book, highly recommend. Simply expelling children who are just ignorant teaches them absolutely nothing. What the hell? Couldn't your parents do anything? Like they obviously know you're not a Nazi sympathizer, so they must have protested or something, right? My parents took it as a cue to get me into a better school. And X200B. The school I left was an alternative school run by hippies. So they had other reasons to suspect my educational potential wasn't being fully tapped there. Was watching porn in the back of the class with a couple of mates. We were 14 and it was religion period. Halfway through the volume randomly went up and you could hear "fuck me daddy" while the teacher was reading Quran. This is amazing. I'm not really religious, but I attended a Muslim school from grade 3-6, so given how strict they are on the most mundane shit, this really cracks me up. Could you expand on that story please? I moved to Lebanon from Germany at the age of 7. Parents thought it would be a good idea for my sister and I to go to a religious school. Religious and cultural reasons. I studied there for about 10 years, of which have not only pushed my sister and myself away from Islam, but also my parents actually. Ironic, right? Anyhow, I only got excluded for 10 days. When my dad picked me up and asked me why I was excluded, I told him it was porn and he couldn't stop laughing. Even funnier though, our school was split in half. Boys section and a girls sections. One time, my sister forgot her lunch at home, so I crossed to the other gate to give her half of mine. I got caught by the head teacher, slapped on the head and then excluded for 2 days again cause we're not allowed to communicate with the girls. I always talk about how the Middle East is rather stereotyped to extreme by the West, but the more I think about shit I've gone through, the more I start to see why we're getting all of this shit. I got caught by the head teacher, slapped on the head and then excluded for 2 days again cause we're not allowed to communicate with the girls. Hey man, at least the girls were allowed to go to school. Big improvement from many countries. I always talk about how the Middle East is rather stereotyped to extreme by the West, But the more I think about shit I've gone through, the more I start to see why we're getting all of this shit. Keep in mind Lebanon is one of the most liberal progressive countries in the Middle East. So you were all sitting together with boners poking up, giving each other side glances? Dude, during our health class, while the family life teacher was talking, my friend just randomly pulled up gay porn on his phone. So like 10 of us straight guys just sat there and watched gay porn instead of following what the teacher said. They never found out, but it was an interesting experience. Same dude showed one of our teachers porn before that year, and nothing ever happened. Our school and teachers were great. I skipped school for sports day to study for university entrance exams. Got expelled from school in my final month for doing this. It suited me fine. More time to cram. Is sports day the same thing as Spirit Week or Pep Rally, or is this something else that holds more weight to graduating? Not OP, but sports day is a UK thing. It's basically a all-school Olympics. It works different in some schools, but in mine, we're in teams. Red, blue, yellow, and you would do sports like tug of war and sack race, and whichever team won the most events win. It's really nothing important. And X200B. Don't you need to graduate school in order to qualify to take those entrance exams? I'm not American. Different system. You do a final exam at the end of school usually, but you don't necessarily need to graduate as long as you get enough points for university. Didn't happen to me, but my grandfather passed this along to me. I used to live in Germany, armored rat, and the military considers dependents living overseas to be a privilege. Well, this kid had gotten into trouble during the day at school, and it escalated into a fight on the bus after school. The assistant principal attempted to break up the fight, and in the process the kid punched the assistant principal in the face. He was expelled from school and the military shipped him, his mother and siblings back stateside, while the dad remained in Germany for the remainder of his tour. I made a throwaway joke the day after the Columbine shooting in my French class, second period class, when a bunch of were talking about it. Someone I had considered a friend jokingly told the teacher he was scared. She said she didn't hear it and wasn't going to do anything. I got called down to the principal's office at the end of the day and got grilled by her and the vice principal. They even dimmed the lights in her office to make it like an interrogation room. Apparently the school district had rolled out a wonderful zero-tolerance policy during the day, and I was to become the first victim. I couldn't even remember the joke at the time. It was years later before I really tried to remember the joke, which I was prompted with, "Or are you gonna shoot up the school?" which I replied, "Oh sure. I'll drive my tank here tomorrow and blow everyone up with my bazooka." And that is why I repeated my freshman year. Got caught with weed. Was allowed to stay on one condition. Had to rat out the dealer. Public school, here I come. Okay, so it wasn't me that got expelled, but a week ago a good mate of mine decided that he and two other mates were gonna smoke weed at school. At first everyone told them how stupid that is and such. Sadly we only convinced one of them not to do it. But the thing is, everyone thought they were gonna do it in the bushes so no one sees them, but like dumb fucks they do it in the bathrooms right outside security cameras, and people smelt it and they got caught. One of them is expelled for possession and other suspended for use. Try this on for a size. A friend of mine got suspended from school for reading the Chronicles of Narnia during lunch break. The reason given by the decode teacher: you are not supposed to read any other books except the Orcs during school hours. Also, these novels, books are not gonna help you in your career at all. The punishment seems a bit ironic. Can't see how suspension will help someone's future career. My teacher asked me if I did an assignment. I told her I didn't know. She said that wasn't a real answer, so I said yes. Turns out I didn't, so they expelled me. This memory problems, along with multiple other disciplinary actions, were caused by symptoms of my chronic illness. It took the expulsion and my parents seeing my symptoms firsthand for everything to click. I tried going back to the school later to ensure that what happened to me will never happen again, to make certain that kids would not be punished for their illnesses, but helped and encouraged towards a diagnosis and accommodations. I pointed out the high rate of suicide at their school directly linked to their lack of response when students are in pain, and pleaded with them to work with me to find a solution to ensure the safety of all of their children. They weren't interested. Okay, so I was expelled twice from my school. Both events were 50/50 my fault. First time I was expelled, I was in the changing rooms after gym class and my friend told me he noticed some guy putting my jacket in a locker. Now this isn't your average US high school locker with, you know, a lock number. Imagine the worst toilet in Scotland scene from Train Spotting, except this was the worst locker in Scotland. After gym class, people regularly pissed into said lockers and stuffed food inside them, which was left for so long that it had decomposed by the time anybody actually got them opened. The locker my jacket had been stuffed in had the door kicked in and bent in such a way that I couldn't open it outwards. But my jacket was so thick I couldn't pull it out or open the locker inwards. A friend suggested kicking it in some more to open it. I refused and said I'd get a teacher to help out, which spooked the guy who stuffed it in there, so he offered to kick it. He went at this locker with his boots like he was a cop in 90s America, and he had just ran into rednecking on the street, but it still didn't budge. Eventually everybody left, so I was there by myself, so I braced myself against the locker and pulled it as hard as I could and the locker popped out of its hinges. These lockers were already fucked up from years of abuse and literally nobody used them anyway, so I was left with the door in my hands. I put my jacket on, turned around, and the head teacher and an entourage of other teachers were staring back at me. Apparently the sound of the dude kicking the locker sounded suspiciously like King Khan beating his dick against a bongo drum at a rock concert, which led them to investigate. I was promptly dragged to the office. Didn't get a chance to explain myself. Expelled. I still don't think I deserved it. The second time involved me stealing some shit and almost killing someone. For context, I became friends with someone who was somewhat of a chemistry genius, doing university level chemistry at 15 years old. We had a fascination with concocting explosives in this dude's kitchen, which thinking back was fucking silly. Anywho, since I wanted to be more like my friend, I thought I'd do some experiments by myself to impress him. Except I was 15 and didn't have any means to get ingredients for them. Next day at school in chemistry class, we ended up doing experiments with copper sulfate. I filled up a tissue packet with as much as I could get, wrapped it up and stuffed it into my bag. Next period I decided would be really sensible to show it off. Some kid notices and says that looks like meth, haha. The kid decides the best idea now is to snatch the bag out of my hand and pour it into his fucking mouth. This kid happily swallowed what he thought was methamphetamine before lunchtime on a school day. B has actually just swallowed approx 5 grams of copper sulfate. C is now about to fucking die. D all of the above. So that was the last I seen of him that day. Then he wasn't in the next day, or the next, or the rest of the week. The next Monday, a full week later, I'm pulled out of class by 2 police officers and a teacher. They explained to me that methamphetamine Michael has been in hospital getting his stomach pumped for the past week, and that they want to know where I had got the meth from. Apparently he had told them I cornered him in a stairwell and poured meth into his mouth and held his nose until he swallowed. They didn't believe that this absolute troglodyte of a child, with a record of possessing and doing drugs in school, would willingly take meth. I explained that yes, I had indeed stole the chemicals from my chemistry class, but he had in fact stole them from me under the assumption it was actually drugs, and took it on his own accord. That explanation wasn't good enough. Expelled. I kinda deserved it. Edit. Wrong chemical. Wow. You write very well. That second story was wild. I'm still trying to process what on earth was going through that kid's head. Did you ever see him again, or hear of him? You know those antidepressants that you're not supposed to give to kids, because they increase the risk of suicide? Yep, I was on M. Stressful day, resulted in an unsupervised detention. Lame suicide attempt resulted in blowing the breaker to the room I was in and the room next door. Expelled as I was determined to be a liability to the school. Getting put in the bad kids school destroyed my life. I went from depressed and bullied, but with regular classes, to being in a tiny class of only other depressives and bullies. And there was no art, music, science, pretty much nothing. We had reading and daily oral language. Start with a capital, end with a period. My teacher didn't know how to use a semicolon. And math. Minimum wage x hours worked equals paycheck. It was always minimum wage. Always. Staff and teachers were a combination of nepotism and sadism. Entire families worked at the special ed school. The principal's son, for the short time he worked there, was the only person who knew enough math to teach pre-algebra. The assistant gym teacher moved to being one of the reading teachers. He liked provoking the kids with anger problems into swinging at him so he could press charges. He especially loved provoking the autistic girl into having fits. Ended up bouncing around a lot. But some things were the same everywhere. Staff were a combination of burnouts and sadists. Teachers responsible for high school education didn't know algebra, so they would find a book, blow the dust off the top, exactly like a movie, hand it to you, and say start at the beginning. Nobody could teach you to use a semicolon. Science was never more than episodes of Bill Nye, or maybe an assistant who decided we could be trusted to iron leaves in wax paper. And if you weren't the plucky kid who forced someone to blow the dust off that pre-algebra book, math was always minimum wage times hours worked equals paycheck. Within the system I was considered to have no behavioral issues. However, I was not allowed back to mainstream because my school assigned therapist said I didn't get along with my parents. I was a teenager. Half of all high schoolers wouldn't be allowed to go to school if that was the requirement. My therapist didn't give a shit. I eventually was allowed to transition back to mainstream, but it was too late. By moving out of special ed, I went from needing 12 credits to graduate to 50. My choice was to become the superest of super seniors, or get my get. One of my exes graduated from an Ivy League school. When she practiced vocab for her GRE exams, she was a little upset to learn her get boyfriend had a better vocabulary than her. But here I am with a get. I'll probably never complete a higher level of learning. I did not have a good childhood leading up to my expulsion, but I might have gotten past it the day that I was left alone, having a breakdown while on drugs that make kids suicidal. That day changed the rest of my life. Not me, but two guys were expelled from my high school. One of them was for cutting off someone's ears while he was asleep. He tied fishing line around each ear, tied the line tightly to something next to the bed, then made a loud noise so the guy would jump up quickly. The other guy was expelled for setting the dorms on fire while we were asleep. One of them was for cutting off someone's ears while he was asleep. He tied fishing line around each ear, tied the line tightly to something next to the bed, then made a loud noise so the guy would jump up quickly. Bruh sound effect. Our school had a stupid rule about how short your hair could be. I had it at the shortest that was allowed, 3 all over, and a bold teacher said your hair's too short. My response, you can talk. I wasn't expelled but suspended for 2 months. I didn't know what alopecia was at the time. Told this story a few times before, but here goes again. Only got expelled from one class. Grade 12 English around end April. Last class of the day. Real close to end of high school. I was in the advanced class, but it was a small school and the collegiate class. Slightly less advanced curriculum, which meant they just read fewer books and their finals test were a tad easier. We're doing presentations. Boring presentations on books we hadn't read. Most of the class was doing other shit. Girls were talking. Jocks were throwing a Nerf football at one another. Nerds were geeking out over some shit or other. But my stoner friend and I were quietly playing chess on a little magnetic board. For some fucking reason, out of the chaos, the teacher identified my friend and I to discipline. Fuck that shit. I lost my temper and asked him WTF his problem was. When compared to everyone else, we were quiet and peaceful. He got pissy and sent my friend and I to the hallway to sit and not disrupt the class. 2 stoner best friends in the hallway with 50 minutes to go before next class. We got bored very quickly and started going through our pockets. He had a couple of joints in his wallet and I had free food coupons from a chicken place about a 10-minute walk away. He was hesitant, but I told him if we don't go now we won't have time to go at all. So we went. We get high on the way there, get the chicken and hurry back. About 5 minutes to spare before end of class. We start eating. Re-eating. Teacher comes out to let us go get our bags to go home. I have a drumstick up to my mouth. Smile. Reach the drumstick towards him. Chicken. He smiled. Of fucking course he smiled. But he was annoyed enough to say he didn't want me or my friend in his class anymore. I used the free period to study for the finals coming up and had more than enough credits to graduate HS no problem. French school. English was an elective. I could have gone and redone that class alone to get my bilingual diploma, but figured fuck it, not worth it. If he kick you out of the classroom, WTF does he expect you to do? Retile the floor? I guess I was supposed to sit there and think about what I did. It's a real stupid way to punish a 17-yo. It might work better against 7th graders, but it sure as shit didn't do anything for me. Add to that the fact, again, it was a small school and other teachers use the same punishment. Sometimes you'd find other kids in the hallway and figured out things to do to waste time. I swear I wasn't involved, but 2 people from my old school got expelled for breaking into the school building in the evening to smoke pot in there, and someone of the cleanup crew saw them, called the cops, and in the end, caused a helicopter searching for them as they ran into a near forest. True legends. I missed 27 out of 28 days in February due to severe depression from a combination of chronic health issues, family issues, being bullied in school, and not dealing with a sexual assault the year before. Every day I would cry on my way to school, so one day I just stopped going, but I would leave my house so that my parents would think I was in class. Eventually the school contacted my parents and told them I could repeat my senior year or drop out. So I dropped out. Once I dropped out I was so much happier. Turns out it isn't normal to have a panic attack every day. I didn't realize what a toxic environment my school was until I didn't have to go anymore. I immediately went got a GED so that I could get a BA, and my life isn't fucked up in a significant way. bringing like 0.001 of a gram to school in the 7th grade and letting my friend see it. He got caught with it and was expelled since he was in possession of it. I came forward and claimed responsibility and took the consequences. I had a weed pipe. I ended up in an alternative school with the violent kids and my education was utterly neglected. Got sent to alternative school my junior year for having a flask of rum in my car. Funny thing is they only searched me because it was 4/20 and there were reports of students coming in high, but they didn't even find my stash. My friend and I sneaked into main office to steal exams papers. We weren't caught that moment, but after writing the 6th paper, that was mathematics, we just made a big mistake being so kind to let you friend know we are in possessing of maths paper 2 days before. They also gave it out and it somehow leaked when people realized after the maths exams that the paper was leaked days before that. They got pissed and went spreading the news that the papers got leaked, so they staffed some investigation and we were sold out by those we were kind to. Coffee in middle school. It all started with this one kid, I'll call her Becky. Her mom drove her to school every day, and her mom bought at Starbucks. She'd share it with her friends, giving the sips. It was one of those real sugary specialty drinks that mask most of the coffee flavor. Becky and her friends were pretty popular, and as they went so did the school. It became a hip thing to come to school with a coffee. Didn't matter if it was Starbucks, Tim's, Dunkin' or even McDonald's. If you had coffee when you walked into school, you were cool. It was actually pretty funny seeing kids trying to swig down better coffee to fit in. When it really caught on though, the administration noticed, concerned about the health problems, and someone potentially getting burned coffee became banned. The thing was, at this point everyone was addicted. Kids were sluggish, getting caffeine withdrawal headaches and becoming miserable. I was in a unique position of being the only student on the school webpage club with the first period study hall. I would pop my head into homeroom, say I'm here, then head to the club room to update the webpage, watch Launchcast video on an unblocked computer. The club room was basically a few computers in a room connected to the East Wing Teachers Lounge. Nobody used that lounge though, as the West Wing was only like 3 years old and had a brand new lounge with new furniture and a TV. Anyways, all that is to set the background for the suspension. The old Teachers Lounge had a coffee vending machine in it, 50 cents for what I now realize was crappy instant coffee. I saw my opportunity. I'd have my friends give me $1 in their order. I'd sneak into the lounge, get them a cup, and once they got a bathroom pass, they'd swing by and pick up their coffee. We were smart and used cans from the juice vending machine. Soda had been banned, but we had a Minute Maid machine. Like Icarius though, I got too bold. I would go to second period with my can of coffee. The jig was up when my arm got bumped and I spilled hot coffee all over my crotch. I held my tongue from screaming and was wearing camo cargus, so that teacher didn't know. But third period was gym, and it was penis inspection day, so coach noticed the redness. I failed penis inspection for the 3rd time that year and got suspended for a week. Someone at my school got expelled because his mom is anti-vaxxed. Now 3 kulal is going around at school. What even is life? The school held me back in kindergarten 1 year cause I wasn't ready for 1st grade yet apparently. When I actually got there they expelled me for already knowing how to read right. Said I was disrupting the others in the class. Sat in detention with 1 for alcohol level. Didn't get expelled since I was graduating, so I had to move to my best friend who didn't live on campus. Good days. My friend asked me if I could hold on to his THC cards until the end of the day. I'm dumb but I didn't want him to get caught with them, so I did it. Long story short, my administrator came into my classroom a few periods later and asked to administer a surge. I said no, but they called my parents and my parents said that they could. I shouldn't have held on to them, but I honestly think that being expelled was a little harsh. Shit, that would only get you detention in an American public school. Skipping class. Seriously?